My name is Cliff Kuhn. I'm the Executive Director of the Oral History Association. I was president in 2000-2001. Well, the first story that comes to mind when I think of my favorite Oral History Association story was at this meeting 30 years ago in Pensacola, Florida, where we intersected with Hurricane Juan. And I drove 7 hours in my Volkswagen into a hurricane from Atlanta to get here. Ended up stalled out in about 1.5 feet of water about a block from the hotel. Had to push my car out of the water to get it going again and whatnot. Then Charlie Hardy and I had just met the previous year at a radio conference. We were going to a variety of conferences because we were among the 2 people in the country who had a radio background and a history background. And we presented here. I had a car, so we drove out on one of the barrier islands. We saw things were kind of closed down. And then literally a panel on a panel truck ripped off the truck and smashed McDonald's window. It was time to get back to the hotel. About a third of the conference couldn't make it in. The keynote speaker couldn't make it in. It was also Halloween weekend. And there were these puddle jumpers coming from Tampa to Pensacola on these small planes, and the Delta flight crews on this Halloween weekend were wearing clown masks. So the passengers thought that they were literally descending into Dante's seventh circle of hell, and they'd get to the ground after this nightmarish experience. The ground crews were literally shaking their hands and congratulating them to making it. So the plenary speaker, the keynote speaker, Bill Luchtenberg, wasn't able to make it. And so the program planners kind of ad-libbed, and they got 5 of the veterans to tell their greatest oral history stories or their worst oral history stories. And the one I remember was Charlie Morrissey, been way back in the organization. And he told about being with a number of US senators at some resort somewhere. And one of them was Senator Sam Ervin from North Carolina. And they were going from one place to another, and Charlie was kind of trailing, and Sam Ervin was not aware that Charlie was trailing him. And Sam Ervin sees this mirror, and in his deep North Carolina accent says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Why, you are, you sexy little devil." And he clicks his heels and goes on, completely oblivious that Charlie is trailing him. It is just an absolutely funny story. So that would be story number 1. Story number 2 comes from Birmingham, 1993, where, first of all, we had Julian Bond, the late Julian Bond, give an absolutely stellar luncheon speech that still sets the standard for any other luncheon address we've ever had. And second of all, there had been a tour to the 16th Street Baptist Church. And on the tour was our friend, Brother Blue, street performer, storyteller extraordinaire. And it turned out that his grandfather had been one of the masons who had built the 16th Street Church. And as the bus went by, he gave a wail, sort of this primordial kind of wail. Then late that night, in the basement of the hotel, about 12:30, there's me, Blue, Rose Diaz, and a couple of Rose's kids. About 12:30 at night, no one else around in the basement. And Brother Blue starts to talk and just go on for about the next hour and a half by himself. And he talks about the butterfly within, about his grade school teacher recognized the butterfly within him. And he tells this in this long kind of poem that's, really, fantastic. And it's this beautiful, intimate moment down in the basement of the hotel around 12:30 in the morning in Birmingham. I'm sure all the people who are there who are still alive will always remember that moment. It's my Alaska story. It was a midwinter council meeting in March 1999, and the icebergs were just beginning to break up in Anchorage Harbor. And they gave us an extra day to acclimate to the time change. And Lou Ann Jones and I were both on council. And we decided to rent a car and tootle around. And being cheap, we rented a Geo. And Lou Ann said, I've never been this far from my home, all of this sort of stuff. We noticed that all of the other cars are not Geos, but are SUVs and trucks and big trucks at that and so forth. And okay, we're tootling along in our Geo, and out of nowhere, this blizzard comes up. And we run off the road. And out of nowhere again, this mountain man, and he looked like a mountain bearded big guy, kind of comes out of nowhere and gets our car back on on the road, and on the way back we have some reindeer sausage, and then get back to Anchorage. And we tell this story to the people from Alaska, and they knew exactly where we had been because there was a little dip in the mountains, and the snow came over through the pass that way, and that was exactly that spot. It's like so funny. We were such idiots, you know, going in our Geo in the middle of Alaska in March and not even thinking about those kinds of things. It's just absolutely hysterical.